All right, official welcome to everybody who's here for this webinar on intention tapping for a worrying world, how to find peace. So, and I want to say thank you to all the people who've turned up live. Some names that I recognize and some people that I don't. So thank you. I know we have people from all over the world, and especially those of you who are joining us at 1 a.m., 2 a.m., 3 a.m. I really appreciate that extra effort, and I hope to make it worth your while. Let's get right into this because we don't have much time, and I have a lot to share from you. And when I was trying to decide what to share first on this title screen, I thought, what better than these pictures from a tapping session I did with a lady in the Philippines when we went there after the super typhoon had devastated huge parts of the Philippines, and many people were killed, and there was a lot of suffering. And as you can see on this lady's face, you know, she was really suffering a lot. Her children nearly died. She thought that they had died. Fortunately, they had been saved. They've been washed away from her, and there was a lot of suffering and trauma to deal with. And as we did the tapping, she brightened up further and further and further and further. And that's what I want to offer you. Before we go further though, we have to know, of course, you've seen this when you signed up, there was a disclaimer. This is informational and educational. Although tapping has developed an evidence base, some of the techniques that I'm using and showing must still be considered experimental because it's new. And therefore we don't have a lot of scientific research on this combination that I'm showing you. Therefore, it must be considered experimental. You have to take full responsibility if you choose to use it or follow it. And if you're dealing with physical or mental health issues, it goes without saying that you should be consulting with a physician or therapist. Okay, so my aims are to introduce you to intention tapping and how to use it to release stress and worry over troubling world events. When I put this out on my newsletter and asked people on my newsletter what was concerning them, this was far and away the #1 thing that came through, that there's a lot of challenges in the world at the moment. And I'm curious, for the people who are here, what are your greatest challenges with what's happening in the world right now? And the key is, what about this is it that you personally find most challenging? So the kinds of things that people came up with from my newsletter, with, you know, with the school shooting in Texas had just happened at that time. There's war in Ukraine. There is climate change. There are massive shifts worldwide. The threat of hyperinflation and so on, and just all kinds of various forms of trauma and traumatic events that are happening that people are seeing on a daily basis. So let's hear from you. What are you? Olivia says poor government. Oh yeah, we just got a new government, and I always say over here we say it doesn't matter who you vote for, the government always gets in. Gary says mass worry, where people's worry triggers other people's worry. Yeah, I think this is one of the reasons why I wanted to run this, was because if you're human and you have a beating heart and you have a feeling body, then you are going to be picking this up. You'll have your own stuff which is being triggered, and then you're going to be picking up stuff from other people, as we'll go through. We'll talk about this. And yeah, I didn't even mention, you know, the issue of COVID and the pandemic and all of the things that have gone along with that for people. Now there's the food shortages. Claire, thanks for writing that, not just for my community, but for desperately poor community. Catherine says climate issues and war. Yeah, Linda's talking about how people are making decisions and on their personal, based on personal gain as opposed to science. I can almost feel the emotion that triggers. Diane talks about racist shootings in America. All of these things. Thank you. Yeah, these are all the kinds of things that we're seeing on a daily basis. And this is the problem that I see with this. There's what's happening in the world and the biggest problem it can cause you. Now think about this. The biggest problem anything can cause you, I believe, is how it makes you feel. Now, it's not how it makes you, it doesn't make you feel that. You get triggered into these feelings by various things because of the mind's reaction, because of what we connect to, what we attach to, as we'll see. And this is where intention tapping can help so much. So if we're going to manage the world as it is, then we have to manage how what's happening in the world makes us feel. And the thing that's making us feel this is, as someone mentioned, Gary, you were saying what you see happening to others. We have mirror neurons. We can get vicariously traumatized by what's happening to other people. Then there's what our mind is making up and projecting, and our mind is designed to project negative scenarios. And then there's what's happening to you. And I'm not crazy enough to assume that it's all just projection. I know some of you are going through difficult things at the moment. You know, there's some things that have happened in my life that have been, you know, relatively difficult, but I'm saying relatively because I know that it's relative to the level of suffering that other people are going through in different parts of the world. And then with that stuff, it's whether we are resisting it and we're stuck, or whether we can accept it and flow with it and go with the flow. The challenge we're facing is that we get this stuff in our daily news cycle every day. And if you're not getting it in, if you're not watching the news, then you'll get it scrolling through social media. And, you know, the term doom scrolling, where you just keep getting hooked into going further. And of course, the reason why is because your mind wants to keep you safe. So it will keep trying to find out if there's a threat to protect you from. The only problem with that is that you have mirror neurons, and your mirror neurons cause you potentially to feel other people's feelings. Now, some of us are more sensitive to this than others. For many years, when I was having feelings, I was like, okay, this is all mine. Now I know when I'm with someone, especially if I'm with a client, I can sense some of their feelings in my body. And, you know, scientists know, neuroscientists know that we now have neurons that fire when we're observing someone else. And this is actually, this is a feature for all animals. And it's also particularly something for us as humans. The neuron mirrors the behavior of the other as though you were experiencing exactly what that other person is experiencing. So when we see people suffering, we can also have some of those same feelings. And then our mind has the capacity to project stuff. It just makes shit up. And the problem is that your nervous system, your mind, your brain can't tell the difference between something you vividly imagine and something that you actually experience. So I know, because people have been telling me this, that, you know, the threat of potential nuclear war has caused a lot of people to project that in their mind. In fact, and your mind will do it for you without you necessarily doing it yourself. It's not like you sit down and say, okay, I'm just going to imagine and work out how I would survive if there were a nuclear war. No, just the threat of that is enough for your mind to start conjuring up images of this and projecting negative possibilities. And your mind does this because it wants to protect you. And so it projects positive, it doesn't generally project positive stuff. It's universal across the planet that our minds project negative scenarios. And I don't care how positive you think you are, they've found that this happens in all cultures, to, you know, all people that have been studied, is that the mind tends to project negative scenarios to prepare you to manage or avoid them. The problem is that we can attach to them as if they're happening now. So the threat of interest rate rises and inflation and not having enough money, and your mind has got you already on the streets suffering and being homeless. And it's even worse if your projections are based on stuff that's happened to you in your past, because the mind will project that into the future to try and stop you from having it happen again. So it gives you a little reminder of how bad that felt to try and protect you. The challenge, of course, is we all know that most of the stuff that our mind makes up is never going to happen. The problem is knowing that is not enough to stop it. And so we need to be able to manage our emotional states, whether it's, you know, we're picking up emotions from other people, whether we are getting triggered emotionally by stuff that our mind is projecting, whether we are suffering because we're going through a crisis or a trauma now, we are going to be able to deal with all of that better if we can learn to manage our emotional state. And this little process I call intention tapping, that I initially called intention-based energy process, because you can use this with or without tapping. It's still surprises me what it can do and what it's possible to do with this with this approach in terms of helping you to release your emotional attachments to problems, the stuff that's really upsetting you, and to restore your energy to flow, and so that you can go with what happens and flow with what happens in life and deal with whatever happens when it happens, as it happens, and have access to your resources. That's really my wish for you from this program. And that's what I want to show you this stuff for. Now, just very quickly, for anyone who's very new to tapping, there is a lot of research on tapping itself. There's been over 125 studies, at least 70 of those are randomized controlled trials, which is the gold standard of research, and 55 clinical outcome studies. There's more than this. This is actually the most recent update I was able to bring in from ACEP. Their website is at energypsych.org, and you can find all the information about the research on tapping itself from their website. It's fantastic. The approach to tapping that we use in intention tapping, or that we combine with the IEP, is a simple type of tapping. It's an approach that I developed together with my colleague, Dr. David Lake. We call it simple energy techniques because it is simple. It's so simple that we could teach it to children like we did when we were in the Philippines, like this beautiful little girl who's modeling it for you, one of the points under the eye. And so this process evolved from emotional freedom techniques. We owe a lot to Gary Craig, who we studied with originally. And we were using EFT and teaching EFT with Gary's blessing. And then we changed it so much that we agreed with him that we would call our approach something different. But you'll find a lot of our articles on his website, and we're still very much in sync with what Gary produced with EFT. It's a fantastic approach. Just that SET is more user-friendly and simpler, and it helps you to get similar results to EFT. There's my good mate, Dr. David Lake. He is now retired from running workshops and programs, so I get to take the credit for all the things that he developed and that we developed together. In SET, the tapping that we use, which we combine in intention tapping with the intentions that I've discovered. And so the tapping points are the same points that are used in EFT. In the long version, the original version of EFT, they include these points on the top of the body, the upper body, as well as on the fingers and side of the hand. And if you're very new to tapping, maybe you learn EFT, maybe you only know the side of the hand point and the upper body points, because now most people use just those shortcut tapping points. Although we use more tapping points, the process we use is very basic and very simple. And so what we do is we tap on these points with 2 fingers of the dominant hand in any order on either side of the body. When you're tapping using this approach, you can focus on whatever you're aware of, your thoughts, your feelings, your body sensations. You can tap directly where you focus in on problems. And we learned that you can also get a benefit just from tapping on the points. So we call that indirect tapping, or unfocused tapping, or mindless tapping, because you can tap mindfully, as I'll show you today, where you can just notice what's happening in your body and you can accept what's there and allow it to do what it does, and then just follow it. And we don't try to tap feelings away in this approach. We tap to help the feelings to move and flow, which is what they want to do, because our belief is that energy is meant to flow and emotions are meant to flow, and life is meant to move you. And your feelings are meant to move, and they move through your body. And so this is the problem that we've had, is that we've been struggling with dealing with our feelings, and that's because we resist them, and we don't want some certain feelings, and we find some feelings difficult to handle. The tapping allows, it's in the most general way, facilitates the flow of those feelings in the body. And in general, the more tapping you do, the better the results you get. And we've discovered that if you tap every day, you can bring down your general stress. Now, this is more important now than ever, because for most people, even if you think you're not being affected by this stuff, as Gary mentioned, picking up the stress of others around you, you can't ignore that. And so sometimes that can creep up on you, and then you realize that you're just, you're just feeling a little bit unmotivated, or you're feeling like, why am I just not, not doing my work so well, or why am I having trouble sleeping? Well, it's because that anxiety is catchy, and the world is suffering a fit of anxiety at the moment. And so this tapping, just simply tapping on the points, can be hugely beneficial. And maybe let me just stop now for those of you who are unfamiliar with tapping. And I'm just going to go through it, because if you know tapping, then you'll know that you'll get the benefits from just tapping on these points. And so we start at the start of the eyebrow, and we just tap gently on that point. And then we follow to the side of the eye, edge of the temple. And then we tap under the eye. And I'm going to ask you to follow along here. So starting again, start of the eyebrow, side of the eye, under the eye, top of the cheek, and just tap gently, hard enough to feel it, not hard enough to hurt. And if you know the tapping already, then you know that just doing this will help your body to start to calm down. It changes your brain wave patterns, it changes your brain chemistry, it changes the energy flow in your body and helps things to harmonize and balance. Under the nose, under the lip, and I can feel myself calming down. I didn't even think I was stressed at all. I thought I'm really feeling good. Well, sometimes you just start tapping and go, because like I said, sometimes that anxiety is just in the background and it just creeps up on us. Next point is under the head of the collarbone, close into the side of the body, under the arm. Ladies, it's middle of the bra band, or gents level with the nipple on the side of the body. And then we tap on the side of the thumb, level with the base of the thumbnail. And then on the side of the index finger, level with the nail, the side of the middle finger. We also tap on the side of the ring finger in this approach, and the little finger, and then on the side of the hand. There's also some combination points on the top of the head that you can tap on. Just tap with a few fingers on there, and also on the wrists. And if you just tap there with the flat of your hand on the inside of the wrist, on the outside of the wrist, you can do it on both arms. And then every now and then you just stop and take a nice deep breath. All right, so there's more. And of course, for those of you who are brand new, this is not enough for you to memorize these points, but you can find diagrams of the points on our website. I'm going to send you to some videos afterwards. And so if you're new, you can go back and do that. But today I'll also be doing some tapping, hopefully with a couple of volunteers, see how many we can get in the time that we have. And, if you have some things about the world that are worrying you, then you might want to volunteer to work with me, and then we'll do some tapping together. And that I'll go through the points again to show everybody. But for those of you who are coming because you know EFT, which is the most popular, most well-known approach to tapping worldwide, millions of people are using EFT. We don't use setup statements or reminder statements. We just simply let you focus on whatever you're aware of, however you're aware of the problem, and you tap on the points, and then you just follow, and you learn in adapting this approach to follow the energy and follow the emotions and allow the thoughts to flow through. And so we do a process of continual tapping on the points. David Lake discovered that when he was working with his trauma clients, originally using EFT, as he got more and more tapping rounds in each session, then he got better results. And so then he thought, well, why stop the tapping? What about if I just get clients to keep tapping on the points the whole time? And he found that those clients who did more tapping got better results. And we found this over and over and over and over again. And so we started using that and getting people in our workshops to do that. And so those of you who know me, I would say keep tapping the whole time during the session. You will get the benefits of an hour of tapping now, and that will tune and tone your energy system to bring down your stress and bring up your confidence and good life energy. Now, another thing that we do is we do fingertip tapping, especially using the thumb of the same hand. So I showed you the points on the hand which you can tap on using the points of the other hand. You can also use the thumb of the same hand just to tap down on the side of the index finger, side of the middle finger, side of the ring finger, side of the little finger. Now, when you get used to this, it's easy to do. It's non-fatiguing. So you can just go down and up these points and just keep tapping on them. You can tap as many times on each point as you want. And this just subtly continues to accumulate a benefit. And the other good thing about this type of tapping is that you can take it with you. So I can put my hand down here. I can be tapping on these points. You wouldn't know that I was tapping on them, but as I continue tapping, any stress that enters my system or that gets triggered is starting to be processed through my body. And so that general continuing to do that ongoing tapping, which is very subtle and very discreet. I've taught it to CEOs who've been able to do it under the table while they're doing their presentation to the board. I've taught it to athletes. I've taught it to many, many people who've been able to take it with them out into their daily life. Okay, so fingertip tapping, these are just some of the differences. So start tapping, and even if you only remember half a dozen of the points I showed you, if you just tap gently on those points the whole time when I keep talking and just alternate every now and then, you can keep tapping for a little while on one of them if it feels better to do that, or you can alternate and tap as many times on each point as you like. And that will bring down your general stress. 98% of people who use tapping within 5 or 10 minutes report that they are feeling more relaxed. And it can also do much, much more for you. Now, the intentions that I use in intention tapping was really a discovery I made when I was suffering myself. And I was led back to reading Byron Katie's fantastic book, Loving What Is. And this statement jumped off the page. It's not our thoughts, but it's the attachments to our thoughts that causes our suffering. And I realized it's the emotional attachments. And when we use tapping, you can focus on something that upsets you. And when you think it initially, it stirs you up. You can think about, war in Ukraine. You can think about what's happening, overseas, or you can think about inflation, or you can think about your own money worries, and that can stir you right up. And then you do the tapping on that thought. The thought is, I'm going to starve, or, we're all going to die, or whatever it is. Or I'm going to get sick, or someone's going to get sick and we're going to suffer and die. And then after you've done the tapping on that for a while, you can think that same thought, and now it doesn't affect you because the emotion attached to the thought has shifted. So it's the emotional attachment that causes the problem. And the key discovery I made was that we can use intention to do this. We can use tapping, but we can also just simply use intention. And I formed a simple intention. When I was suffering at this time, I released all my emotional attachments to this problem. And that intention has become a core part of what I then called intention-based energy process. And now when I combine it with tapping, I call it intention tapping. I release all my emotional attachments to this problem. Now, when I did that, I wasn't tapping. I just simply used the intention, and I felt this massive shift, which was as big as some of the biggest emotional shifts I had from using tapping. So I knew it was significant, and it just came from using the intention. And then I did it again, and I had the same reaction on another aspect of my problem. And I did it again, and then another aspect of my problem shifted significantly. And then after doing this for a while, I realized what was going on in my body, and I realized there was a disturbance in my chest. And again, I had the realization when we have a problem, we have a disturbance in the body. And so that disturbance in the body is where we're experiencing the problem. Okay, we feel our feelings in our bodies. If there is no bad feeling, where's the problem? What is the problem? Okay, if it didn't cause you to feel bad, what would be the problem? You would just have, it might be a problem, but you could just go forward and deal with it without any feelings holding you back. And so I realized, yeah, when you do tapping, you restore the energy flow, and there's a disturbance in flow. You do the tapping, you restore the flow. And again, I had this insight, what if I could use intention? And I formed the simple intention. I restore the right energy flow. In this case, it was my chest. I restore the right energy flow to my chest. Instant, expansive, deep breath without even, just spontaneous. And that became the second core intention statement that I use in this process. Now, it didn't just, it wasn't just I used it a few times, it worked for me, and I decided I'd use it with everyone else. I didn't believe it at first. So I tested it out with my wife, and it worked profoundly for her, just like it had for me. I used it with my friend the next day and shared it with him, and it worked profoundly with him. And then I started sharing it with my colleagues and my clients, and now it's become a thing. And now I want to share it with you. We use the intention tapping to release emotional attachments and restore body energy flow disturbances caused by any problem that you're experiencing, any stuff from your past that's maybe still upsetting you, and any things that your mind is projecting. And that allows you to live your life in the present. And the problem with life right now is that we are getting hooked out of the present by lots of things that are in the future, because everybody's trying to predict the future. Nobody knows what's going to happen, but everybody's trying to say that they know what's going to happen. Oh, interest rates are going to rise. There's not going to be any food. All these things, it's going to be a world war. All these things are going to happen. Well, I tell you what, every time people make predictions, what they prove is that they can't predict the future, because nobody really knows the future. But we want certainty. Your mind wants certainty. So your mind is going to try and project what's going to happen to prepare you to deal with it. The problem is that mostly your mind is going to scare the crap out of you with some of these images and these possibilities that you don't want. And if you fuse with those images, if you get hooked into them, then you feel it as if it's happening now. And this is the problem. The good news is you're only going to have to deal with what actually happens, if it happens, when it happens. But your mind won't tell you that. Your mind will tell you, no, this is going to happen, that's going to happen, and so on. Yeah, interest rates rose recently in Australia. They rose by more than anybody predicted. 27 economists predicted how much they would rise by, and all of them were wrong. Actually, I think 2 of them were close, okay? So everybody who tries to predict the future just proves that they can't. Okay, so the problem is, that, your mind is doing this. You know that it doesn't help to worry, but that logic isn't going to help you. So let's tap, let's do some tapping. And when we do the tapping and use the intention tapping on the things that your mind projects, we use these types of intentions. I release all my emotional attachments to this projection that my mind is making, that this bad thing is going to happen. I release all my emotional attachments to the fantasy that my mind is making up, that I'm going to suffer, the world's going to end, and we're all going to die. Now, just because you know logically that that's not going to happen doesn't mean that you aren't hooked to it emotionally. So the key here is that we're using the intention tapping to release the emotional attachment so that you don't have to suffer and you don't have to worry about stuff that isn't really necessarily going to happen. Now, I would like to show you this rather than talk about it. So if you're a worrier, if you're someone who's anxious, if you are someone who's worried about what's happening in the world, and you have a good internet, and you want to volunteer to do some tapping with me. Now, if you tap, you're going to be recorded. The recording is going to be shared. You're not going to be paid any money, and the recording is going to be made available to other people. That's all, what you need to know up front. And so I would love to give you the opportunity if you want to volunteer. And then what that does is it gives us an opportunity to go through the tapping again, the basic process, for me to show you how to use intention tapping on some of these worries about the world, and also for the person maybe to get some relief. No guarantees expressed or implied, but it has worked for a lot of people. That doesn't mean it's going to work for you in exactly the same way. Let's see. It's always a test. So if you would like to volunteer, please mention in the chat I will then find you and I will promote you to panelist. You need to have a working internet and camera and microphone, and you know, if you're worried about stuff, if you're triggered by stuff that's happening in the world, then I'll take you through some tapping on this, and we'll all tap along. Because what happens, those of you who are familiar with tapping, you know that there's a thing called borrowing benefits, where if someone else is working on an emotional issue and you tap on these points on your body while they are working on that emotional issue, then you can get some benefits on your own issue. So I'm waiting for someone to type in the chat. Maybe you have, or maybe I'm missing something. I do have someone who's put up their hand, but I think that was to ask a question rather than to volunteer. So I haven't seen anybody volunteering yet. So I'm hoping that I'm going to get someone volunteer very, very soon. Okay. So Celine would like to. Okay. Celine, where are you, Celine? Okay. All right, let me find you, Celine. Is that the Celine that I know? Okay, Celine. All right. Well, why not? Okay. Promote to panelist. Lovely to see you. Celine is from beautiful France. And hopefully she'll be joining me in just one moment. So I need you to switch on your camera, Celine, and then I can see you.
Okay. I can't.
Okay. So normally you have a little icon where you can start or stop your video. Let me see.
Yes, Steve. I have a message telling me that I can't because you stop it.
Oh, did I? Well, okay.
Yeah.
So now let me go here and allow you. Okay. All right. Well, I didn't really stop it, but what I'll do is, because I know you and I trust you, I'll make you co-host.
Oh, yes.
Now you're co-host. Don't you take over my program.
Thank you so much.
Lovely to see you. And thank you for volunteering. So what we're going to do here for everybody who's watching, we're going to do some tapping with Celine. We're going to do a little bit of intention tapping. I'll show you how I combine the simple tapping of SET with the intentions that we use in IEP, and now we call that intention tapping. So just for the sake of reminding everyone, if we start at the eyebrow point, if you can tap on that point with me, Celine, that would be lovely. And then the side of the eye. And of course, Celine is doing what a lot of people do. She's tapping on both sides at the same time. You can do that. That's fine. And notice that yawning, that's already starting to release some stress and tension. It's a very common thing that happens when people start doing tapping. So Celine, your body responds to good treatment. And this is why it works when you use it and it doesn't work when you don't. So if you start using it, it will tend to start moving the energy. Okay. Under the nose, under the lip, under the collarbone. Just a reminder for the people who are new to tapping, under the arm and side of the thumb and the index finger. Good, your body is so responsive to this tapping. Now, people are saying we don't see you both at the same time, so I'm going to change it to gallery view. Thank you for letting me know that, Dominique. You should see us both now, is that correct? Okay, so I'm sorry, yes, everybody just had speaker view. So that means that I'm probably dominating those that part of the recording. Now, where were we? Side of the index finger, middle finger, ring finger. You went ahead, little finger, because you know the tapping, right?
Yes.
A lot of people here who know the tapping, and like me, that doesn't mean you've been using it on all this stuff. So now that we're tapping, we're just going to keep tapping the whole time, right? And now, tell me what's worrying you. Tell me, what is it about the world, what's happening in the world? What's been triggering?
What's worrying me, and I don't want to think about it, because I've been really stressed for 2 years, and it didn't really help me. So now I'm decided to stop listening to anything. But I get an information recently that
trying not to think something is hopeless. And it's hopeless because, in fact, what you resist persists. And when you try not to think something, your mind sets that up as a target and has to keep it in the back of your mind to check that you're not thinking it. So in fact, the stress centers remain activated all the time that you're trying not to think it. Now, the reason why you don't want to think it is because when you think it, it's triggering feelings, right?
Yes.
All right. So with the intention tapping, we deliberately focus on the thing. We allow it to be there instead of trying to push it away. And the research shows that if you can allow those negative thoughts to be there, you don't have to act upon them, you don't, and so on. And then the stress centers tend to settle down. Now, the reason why, of course, you don't want to do that is because you get triggered by it. So what's the thought? What is the thing that we don't want to talk about or focus on or listen to or whatever?
But about there is going to have another lockdown. And maybe that all the crazy stuff that happened start again on September.
Okay. So just say I release all my emotional attachments.
I release all my emotional attachments
to all my mind's lockdown projections.
To all my mind lockdown projection.
Yeah. Lots of energy connected to that, right? The bigger the bodily release that you see, the bigger the energy attached to
wow.
That's like one of the biggest yawns I've seen this month, you know. I see lots of yawns with tapping, but that was something. So that's
I can tell you that I have a lot of pain in my head.
Yeah, so we started with releasing emotional attachments, and now you're noticing where it's affecting you in your body, right?
Yes.
So now we tap and just say, I restore.
I restore.
The right energy flow.
The right energy flow.
To my head.
To my head.
And just notice. Just notice what it does. We let it process, we let it move, and we just notice what it does. And sometimes the feelings get stronger, sometimes they change, sometimes the thoughts come, sometimes we have images or memories. What are you noticing?
I noticed that I can feel less pain in my head, but I didn't do the connection between what I say and the pain of my head that I have for three weeks now.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So I believe when you're working with the body part and sensation, it's the same as if you're working with the mind. And the mind wants to make all the connections. It wants to know what's going on. The judging mind wants to be conscious of everything. But emotions and feelings have logic of their own. And so we can follow the feelings or we can follow whatever comes up in thoughts. Either way works the same. So notice what's there now. What happens now?
I feel better, but I have a
perfect. Now,
oppression here.
Not perfect that you have that bad feeling, but it's perfect because this is what happens. You notice where the feeling is next. And so even just noticing that, instead of running away from your feelings, we want to allow our feelings to be there notice them, not resist them, and then we're going to allow them to return to flow. So just say, I restore
the
right energy flow to my chest and my heart. Yeah, and that's normal. There's an emotion behind that sensation. And just let the feelings flow and be there. And just notice what you notice. And keep tapping. So I'm tapping, and I'm going to highly recommend that everybody who's observing keeps tapping, because, of course, when someone else contacts emotion, your mirror neurons are going to start to go, and they're going to connect to things that are upsetting for you. And so the benefits come from doing the tapping along with the other person. So what's happening?
Now I have my, it comes back here.
Yeah, yeah. And you might notice that sometimes there's a common pathway. For some people, it's their throat. For some people, it's their jaw. Some people, it's their chest. Some people, it's their heart. Some people, it's their diaphragm or stomach. And then sometimes it's like, it keeps getting activated in that area. And each time you release something, it's like clearing a little pathway for a little bit of freedom for energy to flow, okay? But as you know, problems don't just have one part, they have more than one part. So there's more than one thing about this that upsets you, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Now, we don't even have to know what those things are, but for the sake of the exercise, because the people who are observing might want to know what some of those things are and they wouldn't make sense to them otherwise, what are some of the things about that that concern you or worry you or trigger you?
About the future, or about?
Yeah.
Because
the future, about, well, it's also about the past, right? Because this is going back, you're saying it might go back to what it was, right?
But right now I have some anxiety about my body, because I have a lot of pain in my body.
Okay. So just say, I restore the right energy flow to this anxiety feelings. Feelings. So we can go with the mind or the body part. If we know the thoughts, we can release attachments to the thoughts, and that restores the energy stored up in that to flow. If we know the body disturbance, we can restore the energy flow to that area. Okay.
As you say, it's, of course, it's linked, because I have pain in my body, and I try not to think about it, otherwise my mind go crazy and say, oh la la, what's going on? I have a disease, and what is it? And
gonna make up shit, right? So just say, I release all my emotional attachments.
I release all my emotional attachments.
Now, it's not, see, it's the fact that your mind does that is not the problem. It's believing it or getting hooked into reacting to it as if it's real. So just say, I release all my emotional attachments.
I release all my emotional attachments.
To believing.
In believing.
My mind's projections.
My mind projection. Yes, it's exactly that.
Of course, your mind is creating images of you suffering and dying and being very sick or whatever. Yes. And if you have, a sore here, that means you have cancer, or you have coronavirus, or you have something else, or whatever.
And the thing is, I don't want to hear that, so I don't want to face it, and so I have pain in my body.
Okay, so just say right now what's happening in your body in terms of pain.
But it's in the here.
That spot, yep.
And it affects my back, in the back, and even in my legs.
Yep. Okay, so just say I restore.
I restore
The right energy flow.
The right energy flow
To my back.
To my back.
And my legs.
And my legs.
And my neck.
Oh, and my neck. Oh, and my head.
Yep, that's what I was going to say next.
And the good thing, it's what I observe. It's moving. It's not staying at the same place all the time.
Right.
So I know it's a good thing, but
yeah, feelings are meant to move and move through the body. And it's only when they're stuck that there's a problem. Now, if you have pain and then you keep having the same pain, then that's a message that you need to get that checked out to find out what you're really dealing with, rather than because your mind will just make stuff up. So if you have pain, you get a diagnosis. If you have these feelings and they're moving around the body, you know it's energy and emotions and sensations, and then just follow it and allow it to keep following and just see what happens. And so we just keep tapping and we keep allowing whatever comes next to emerge. And in this process, we're really letting the unconscious mind work through this for us. So we're following the energy and following the images, thoughts, sensations, whatever. Okay.
I feel more joy and less stress.
All right, so far so good. So this is what happens when you start to move some of this stuck energy. Your mind starts to think a little more expansively because it's not stuck. When you have stuck feeling, you're in a stuck perspective. If you can only see it as one possibility, then you're stuck with that perspective, and you're stuck with the feelings of that and no movement. So movement is life, and that includes all the possibilities, see, because we're not running away from the difficult stuff, but we're also not making that everything. Okay. And the mind will make that everything. It'll help you to forget that you actually have a life and that you're currently still alive, and that you're not dead yet. Okay.
No. And I can perceive what really helps me in all this session, well, everything, but what comes in my mind, it's really when I release all my emotional attachment to my mind, to what my mind say, or something like that.
Yeah. Believing what my mind is.
Exactly. Yes, it's that.
See,
yes.
Because what your mind wants to do, it wants to project all kinds of negative possibilities so that you can look at them and say, oh, if that happens, I'll have to deal with it like this. Or if that happens, this is how I can avoid it or whatever. But instead of seeing it from outside, we often get hooked into it. And now we're living it as if it's real, and it's just interfering with our life because it's not happening to us right now. It's just a mental projection. And so the thought, thinking about negative scenarios is not the problem. And if you try not to do that, you're going against your mind. Your mind is going to do that. It's going to give you all kinds of, it'll have you, oh, here's what you look like, in a ventilator. Here's what you look like, whatever. And then you do the tapping and you say, I release all my emotional attachments to the projection of me with a ventilator shoved down my throat. And then you go, oh yeah, okay, I'm not sick yet. I'm here. I'm in my living room and I'm alive. See?
Yes.
Yeah. All right. So we might just pause here, Celine. Thank you so much for volunteering.
And thank you so much, because I really feel much better, and a lot of stuff have been released. So thank you so much,
well,
Steve.
keep
Thank
tapping,
you.
keep tapping.
Yes.
Because you know, and I know that more things can emerge. And so tomorrow when you wake up, your mind will come up with some more stuff, because that's what it does. And if instead of trying not to think that, you allow it to be there and just release your emotional attachments, restore your energy flow, keep just following what comes next and see where it goes. Okay.
Thank you so much.
All right, thank you. So now I'll just remove host permissions and make you back to being an attendee. And thank you so much. All right. So please, if you would, I know there's some people saying thank you, Celine. Merci, Celine. Merci beaucoup. Diane says, I feel inspired by seeing your willingness to fully release in your body. Annette says, I can feel a great relief, yet I have a question of doubt. Well, yes, of course. Of course, your mind will keep on coming up with doubts and projections, and that's what it does. And so you just take the next thing and take the next thing and use this process on it. So let me just go back to what I was sharing. Of course, we use the projections and fantasies releasing statement. I release all my emotional attachments to this projection that this bad thing is happening or will happen. We also used, I restore the right energy flow to this area. Okay, so apart from the projections, there's also the stuff that happens to us, okay? And the problem is that bad stuff happens to all of us on a regular basis. Again, I don't care how much you are into law of attraction or into positive thinking or whatever, stuff comes up that you have to deal with on a regular basis. And the challenge is that if we're in the flow, we can deal with what happens. We can go with it, we can flow with it, and we can accept it. But because we have expectations about how things should be, because we have rules about what should be happening, we have all these shoulds that get in the way, and we also have denial. You know, and because we don't want bad things to happen, and so then we start arguing with what's happening. And when you're arguing with reality, as Byron Katie says, you only lose every single time. And so our emotional attachments to what should be happening, what should not be happening, or to this isn't happening, that stops us from being able to work with what is happening and see a way forward. And as Helen Keller says, we don't see the door that's open to us because we're looking at what's closed. The solution is to ultimately get to the serenity prayer with all of this stuff, the stuff that's happening to us and the stuff that's happening overseas and the stuff that's happening in the world. What is the stuff that we can change, and what is the stuff that I need to change? And, you know, do we know the difference? Now, I think intention tapping can help you, number one, to discern, to have that clarity. Okay, this is for me to do, and this is something that I don't, you know, either right now I don't have the capacity to intervene over here, or I got to focus on my thing. And so it helps you with that wisdom. Secondly, it helps you with accepting the stuff that you can't change, but it also helps you with accepting the stuff you can change and being able to access your resources to be able to deal with what's happening. Now, of course, it's all about acceptance, because until we can accept what is happening, then we can't deal with it. If it's raining, then arguing with the fact that it's raining and saying it shouldn't be raining is only a way to get ourselves to suffer. As Michael J. Fox says, my happiness grows in direct proportion to my acceptance and in inverse proportion to my expectations. Okay, so when we deal with stuff, it's the attachments that's the problem. It's the emotional attachments that are causing us to get hooks. It's because of our denial and our beliefs and the decisions that we made from the events that happened to us that prevents us from being able to move forward. And if we can release our attachment to that, then we can accept what's happened or what's happening, and we can go with it. Now, the problem with acceptance is that we don't want to accept. This should not be happening. The world should not be going like this. There shouldn't be war, in these times. There shouldn't be supply chain issues. There shouldn't, the government shouldn't be doing what it's doing, but they are. Now, some people do the false acceptance. They're like, it is what it is. Well, that's a forced way of dealing with it, okay? And then some people resist accepting because, it feels like you're giving it in. It feels like if you accept what's happening, that you're agreeing with it. And it feels like it's passive. But actually, acceptance is required in order to deal with everything. Because otherwise, if you're not accepting what's happening, how can you deal with what's happening? Okay. In order to deal with what's happening, you have to start from where you are. You have to start with what you've got. You have to start with where you are, when you are, where you are in the world, and go from there. And so you have to accept where you are. And the problem is we don't want to accept where we are. We want to be where we should be. We want things to be back the way they were. We want things to be the way they're not. And now we're suffering because the world isn't that way. Really, I could tell you that you need to start with acceptance, and then you're like, no, I don't accept. Well, actually, acceptance starts with non-acceptance. And Eckhart Tolle says, his disciple comes to him. He says, I've got this problem that's irritating me. He says, okay, well, accept it. And he says, I can't accept it because I'm irritated about it. He said, then accept that. He said, what? Accept that I'm irritated? He said, yes. Bring acceptance to your non-acceptance and start from there. So this is really the process we use with intention tapping. Instead of denying, we actually accept that we don't accept. We start with, okay, I'm angry about this. I'm upset about this. And we work with that should. We work with that part of us that wants to deny, the part of us that wants to, that is in disharmony. And paradoxically, it actually leads us more towards peace. And hopefully I'll have a chance to show you a little bit more of that, because we can do a little bit more tapping with someone in a moment. And this is really tapping that starts on the shoulds, because shoulds are causing a lot of suffering in the world. And the problem with shoulds is that they don't do anything but cause suffering. See, we only do what we want to do or what we have to do. We don't do what we should do. And other people don't do what they should do either. And so if you want to influence things, you've got to start with what you want, and you've got to start with what you have to do. If you start with what you should do, you're never going to do it, and you're going to be grinding your gears. And if you are fixated on what other people should be doing or should not be doing, then you are going to be suffering, because people are going to go on doing what they do, and the world is going to be going on being the world regardless of that. So tapping on the shoulds is where we start. Okay, we start with accepting that we don't accept, and we do some tapping on that. Now, let's see if we can get one more quick volunteer. We've only got about 16 minutes left, so we can only show you about 5 or so 7 minutes of tapping. If you would like to volunteer to do some work, oh, Claire, come on, let's do you. Yeah, Claire says I could work on my anger and despair about politicians and the powerlessness that I feel. That's going to be shared by a lot of people, Claire. So let me let you talk now. Let me just check, because we've got more than one Claire. So I've got to allow you. Okay, we're going to promote you to panelist. Okay, so come on down, Claire. I also know you. There's a lot of people in this call that I know. Okay, it just happens to be you're the ones that are volunteering. And that's okay. So now I'm going to make you co-host as well, so that you can turn your video on. And you already know the tapping, Claire. So let's be tapping.
Yeah,
okay.
I am tapping.
And Eric said, yes, that speaks for me too. I know it does, Eric. I've seen some of your Facebook posts in the past. Anger and despair about politicians and the powerlessness I feel. This is the problem with that should stuff. It just disempowers you, because of course, how can you change what they do? Okay. All right. So right now, when you think about that, what are you aware of?
What I'm aware of is shaking, intense feeling throughout my core.
Okay.
and just fury and despair about the inability to even start to work with people.
Okay, now I hope
to make things
everybody's
better.
tapping, because we can feel the kind of, I'm going to call it fury in there, okay? And just since you're aware of the feelings, we start with the feelings. So just say, I restore
the
right energy flow to this fury and this shaking. And we let the feelings move us and move through us. We let ourselves be moved by this, because when we get these bad feelings and then we try not to have them, that just makes things get stronger. And then it can't go anywhere, it can't resolve.
Yeah.
And just let it do whatever it does, and don't try and make it do anything. Just tap and notice. And notice what comes up in your mind, body, thoughts, feelings, images, sensations, memories, whatever.
I think what I struggle with most is the powerlessness. I just feel that I switch off the news, or I try and switch off the news, but I then need to switch on it because I don't know what's happening. And it's like this two-way process of, what do I do? What can I do?
All right, so the powerlessness is the thought of that is, I can't do anything about this, right? So let's go with that. Just say, I release all my emotional attachments.
I release all my emotional attachments
to powerlessness.
To powerlessness.
And if the thought is, I can't do anything, then you would say, I release all my emotional attachments to, there's nothing I can do, or I can't do anything. Just let that be the thing. And then just let that do what it does. And your unconscious mind will just start to process that. And let's see what comes next.
And what happens is I feel just a tad calmer.
Well, you shouldn't do. I mean, there's all these things, bad things that are happening.
And actually, the only thing that gets me through at the moment is actually tapping.
Yeah, so you're doing tapping, and that's taking the edge off some of these bad feelings. But I'm going to suggest that you do some direct intention tapping on this stuff. Okay. Now, I'm not sure how much you're doing it on that, but let's see if we can do just a couple more aspects.
Yeah.
Okay, so you mentioned the TV.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's the trigger, right? The stuff that's on the news, maybe?
Yeah.
Okay. Just say, I release all my emotional attachments.
I release all my emotional attachments
to what the news tells me and shows me.
To what the news tells me and shows me. And I suppose what I feel is I have difficulties watching it, because I think, for God's sake, can't you see what's going on? And I can't believe these people who are supposedly in power. And bear in mind, I'm British, and I have very strong feelings about what
so just say, I release all my emotional attachments.
I release all my emotional attachments
to my British thoughts.
Oh, to my British thoughts.
Honestly, there's a whole culture full of crap in there.
Oh dear. And the Britishness of what's going on at the moment.
Yes.
Oh, thank you, Steve.
And just say, I release all my emotional attachments.
I release all my emotional attachments.
To what politicians should be doing.
To what politicians should be doing. And I know I don't know any better. I'm not putting myself up there as somebody who knows better, but I do feel that surely to goodness, we have moved on more than this divisive rubbish that's going on at the moment.
All my emotional attachments.
I release all my emotional attachments.
To the fantasy.
To the fantasy.
Of perfect politicians.
Perfect politicians.
All bringing everyone together.
All bringing together. Can we just have little reasonable politicians? Oh.
Well, for now, we've got the ones we've got, see? So, of course, you can vote differently when you can vote, but right now, you've got what you've got. So now that's just saying it is what it is, and that doesn't do anything. That's logic, right? The key is what's happening for you right now when you think about that.
Yeah. I suppose what's happening, I mean, I know I can connect all of this back to all sorts of rubbish from my past, but it's like how to maintain or manage the
Okay, since you now have, this is very common, since you're now starting to see that there's things being triggered because of your past programming, that's where you go next. Now, of course, we don't have time in this short thing to go there, but if you do go there and you follow that, then settling down that stuff from the past can settle down the present, because these idiot politicians, they didn't cause that, they're triggering it, okay? And they're triggering it because they're breaking your heartfelt rules or programmed shoulds or whatever they are that are hardwired into your nervous system by the negative things that have happened to you.
Yeah.
So it's your feelings that have been triggered. That's why two people can watch the same news. One of them's triggered and one of them isn't.
Thank you for that.
That's the logic of it. But there's, you know the tapping, and so it's a matter of now just using it and doing it. So we have to pause those. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much. That was really helpful. Thank you.
Beautiful. Thank you. All right. So now let me just see if I can find you again and make sure it's the right you. Oh, where are you? Oh, yeah. It's all right. I'll get you back there. Here we go. Change role to attendee. Okay, so we just have a few minutes, and there's some beautiful stuff coming in the chat to Claire to say thank you. A lot of people following along with that and doing the tapping, and really appreciate your letting us know what's happening for you in the background, the people, because I can't see. It's not like a normal Zoom program that I run where we see everybody. Okay, so we got like 6 minutes, and let's see if I can give you some stuff to take away with this. First of all, if you would take this chart and just go away and identify all of your things that you think you should be doing or you should not be doing, and start using the tapping and release your emotional attachments to I should be doing this, or I shouldn't be doing this, or others shouldn't be doing this, or others should be doing this. How much of that shoulding is happening in social media, and people are going to war on this stuff. It's crazy land. That can release a lot of your emotionally hooked trances. Now, in the intention tapping approach, we're not trying to create new trances for you. We're not trying to tell you, if you're upset about the world, it's all going to be okay. The world is going to be whatever it's going to be. And the challenge is for us all to be able to get to the point where we know that we can deal with whatever happens for us. The only way you can do that is releasing your attachments to getting hooked into what should be happening or what shouldn't be happening, and release the trances that are hooking you to react in those ways that are stirring you up and making you anxious and making you upset and making you angry. Again, they're not making you angry. It's just the emotional attachments. So we are about releasing emotional attachments, not programming your mind to be positive or stuff like that. Your mind is going to do what it does, and no matter how positive you are, I'm not saying you can't set goals. I'm not saying don't think positive thoughts. I'm saying that's not the way forward with intention tapping. It's releasing the BS, because you would only need to do that reprogramming if your current programs were upsetting you. So if you just release your attachments to them, then lo and behold, the good stuff just comes up. I think if we're going to change the world, it starts with us. And, you know, Lao Tzu wrote about this thousands of years ago. If we want to eliminate the suffering, then we've got to work on ourselves. If we want to give a gift to the world, then the greatest gift that we can give is our own self-transformation, which starts with self-awareness, which starts from just noticing what's happening for us. That's the first step in intention tapping, noticing what's been triggered. And then instead of trying to push it away, accepting and allowing it to be there, adding the tapping to its presence. And then if we notice a disturbance in flow, assisting the body's energy to flow and move in the way that it wants to flow and move, and allowing ourselves to be moved by what happens in life and allowing the feelings to move through us. If we're suffering, it's always because we're attached to falseness, and the false stuff is what hooks us. And so if you release your attachments to false beliefs, false shoulds, false, criticism of yourself and stuff like that, false desires and fears, which are being triggered by other people's projections, sometimes not even your own, then you get to the truth, and the truth is always liberating. If you're not liberated, you haven't got to the truth yet. I'd like to offer the intention tapping as a way to help you to deal with truth and to get back to your truth. And I can tell you that I have had so many benefits in my own life from this, that there are things that I thought were just part of who I am that have shifted and changed. And now I think, what other BS have I been believing that's just not true? There's a lot of free stuff on our website at intentiontapping.com. There's also a bunch of stuff at EFTdownunder.com. There's a bunch of free videos on my YouTube at Wells Down Under. But I also want to offer a package for people who want to do this for yourself and go further. And if you can't come to a workshop, or you can't manage to do that, but you want to do it at home where it's safe and comfortable, I put together a mega package last year, which I offered on my email list, and then I put the price up, and it's been up ever since. I put the price back up. Now I'm just because of this webinar, and because I think there's a bunch of stuff in there that people need, like the emotional resilience program, the overcoming anxiety program. These are all programs that I ran, which people paid up to $199, in some cases $299 for. And I've put 6 of those programs into a package, and you can get the recordings of all of them. They're combined with the extra bonuses of the Go For It program and my values intensive workshop recordings of an entire workshop that I ran. There's over 60 hours of video, and there's more than $1,400 of value. And I'm putting that for you for the next 7 days, $197. The links are on the screen if you want to take a screenshot and you're urgent, you want to go there now. I will be sending those out in my newsletter. If you're subscribed, you can subscribe for that at EFTdownunder.com if you're not subscribed. I'll also put it with the video recording up on YouTube, so you can go to my YouTube and you can look at the details underneath, and you'll find the links there. It's $197 for the whole package of more than 60 hours of video. You'll be busy tapping, but you can choose the ones that you want to do, and you can dip in and out, and you can tap along with people and borrow benefits. There's a lot of fantastic stuff in there. Or if you want to just, because I know it's an issue financially for a lot of people, there's also a monthly payment of like $19.99 a month for 12 months, which is, I think that most people should be able to afford that. And the benefits of this for what it can do for you, I know personally, is fantastic. But if you really want to have a chance to work with me live, I would love to see you in a workshop. And we have a level 1 online workshop coming up very soon. It's a 3-day, 4 hours per day on Zoom. You can join from anywhere in the world, from the comfort of your own home. There are 2 different time options, so you can join at a time that suits your time zone. The details of that are on the intentiontapping.com website. You can find details of all the upcoming programs on the events and training page, which you can access from the homepage of intentiontapping.com, or the Intention Tapping Level 1 workshop, which is intention-tapping.com/intention-tapping-level-1, the numeral 1-workshop. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to let everybody who signs up for the workshop is going to get all of that stuff in the mega package included in the workshop fee, which is like, I've never done this before for anybody, but I just think, well, hey, let's put it out. You don't have to wait for the workshop to start working through this stuff, and you can work on your issues if you feel like you're a self-sabotager, or you feel like you have anxiety, or you need to work on your resilience, or you feel like you're just surviving rather than thriving. Then each one of those there's a program for, and you can get that as a bonus when you sign up for the workshop. Shortly after you sign up, we'll do that manually and give you access to those programs as well. So I think that's a fantastic offer. Personally, I've never done anything like that. I think it's, honestly, if it were me, I would buy it if I hadn't already been through it and done it, if it wasn't me doing it. And I hope that you do take advantage of it, and I hope that it helps you. I want to say thank you to everybody for being here. The people who've come live, I know it's a commitment of your time. I hope that you found that it's been useful. I'd love to get some feedback about how you found it. You can write to me, admin, ADMIN, @EFTdownunder.com. Please just take a moment, just send an email, let me know how you found it. And if you want to take advantage of those programs, then please do. And I look forward to seeing some of you, hopefully live, in the workshop in a few weeks' time. And of course, there will be more in future, and we'll let you know about those as they come. And if you do, if you're not signed up to my newsletter, go on, at the moment, we've only got to sign up on the EFT Down Under site. Go there and or send me an email that you signed up for this. You should have my email details, or the admin at EFTdownunder.com email. And just let me know you want to get signed up for the newsletter, then we'll let you know about all the things that are coming up, including some future webinars like this. As people let me know what they want and what they need, and how they found things, then I like to adjust and offer more to help more people. So thanks again. Thanks to our volunteers. Please give a round of applause to Celine and Claire. Thank you so much for being vulnerable and sharing your stuff with us. And I hope it's been helpful for you. And I look forward to seeing you, and I look forward to hearing from you. So ciao for now. Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.